Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public, and we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Monday. It is August the 26th. We are rolling live right now on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. We are also rolling on X. We are rolling on Facebook. We are rolling on YouTube. Take your pick where you want to come and see us, and make sure that you guys also join our locals page. You can do so at KyleSeraphin.com. That's the locals page, KyleSeraphin.com. We actually had the folks from Rumble and Locals, same company, reach out to us and say, hey, we'd like to talk to you. You guys are growing pretty well over there. We like that. Thanks. That's because of you guys. That's because of the listeners. Thanks for interacting over there. We really appreciate it. Make sure you guys have signed up over. And I try to answer all the comments and the questions. That's what I'm going to try to do. That's my commitment to you. If you guys want to support us, it's $5 a month. You can do that too. We did a private live stream talking about machine guns on Friday. So there will be some other neat things going on. Good news. The weather's starting to turn, at least here in Liberty Hill, Texas. That doesn't mean that there's not crazy things happening. We had a guy try to break into one of our, neighbors. We only have 7,000 people that live in this town. Someone tried to break in. Looked an awful lot like an MS-13 a-hole, except he was in his 30s and he was carrying a machete. He wasn't wearing a shirt, and he went onto the back porch and tried to get in through doors. It's a weird time right now, folks. It is definitely a weird time. We're going to talk a lot about all of the things that I think are weird. We are T-minus 40 days out. We are 40 days and out from the election, November 5th. And so this is a good time to kind of take an opportunity to look at that, to sort of see where do we stand. I mentioned in the show notes kind of a very broadly based thing, something Steve Friend and I talked about on Friday. And it is that when we have an election that is about personalities, Democrats win. When it's about policies, the Republicans win. They are doing a great job, they being the Democrat Party, the apparatus of the media that is pushing this forward, making this about vibes, making it about feelings, making it about Kamala, making it about whether or not she's likable and relatable, and is she cool, and is she brat, which makes me want to punch somebody in the face. I want to grab whatever male says the word brat as a description, and other than saying like you're a child is misbehaved, and I want to just blast him right in the face. I really do. I despise so much of what's going on in our modern culture, particularly the way that people talk about things. But if it's about policies, it's a lock. The policies are bad. The examples are numerous. We're going to talk about mortgage rates today. We're going to talk about taxation in the city of Chicago. I'm going to kind of fixate on Chicago a little bit because they're 1, 2, 3 days out now from the Democratic National Committee having their meeting there. I'm going to show you the homicide rates and how wild that is. The DNC week was a violent week because they pulled police away from all the neighborhoods. So it cost them an awful lot, and they have to pay for their policies with something. And it turns out they tax the so-called rich people, and yet the rich people are probably like a guy who owns an apartment building with his mom and is trying to make a living that way. So we're going to do some of that stuff. And then because I got completely derailed, this is going on. I'm going to do a breaking news story here that just came out. We're going to get our head together and we're going to talk about this video that just dropped from The Blaze and my friend Steve Baker, who you know has been on the show a lot. We're going to talk about new video that I think might be the most disturbing thing about January 6th that I've seen yet. And I don't know any other way to explain it other than after watching it, I don't have a good explanation for it. There is no excuses. You can make a lot of excuses for a lot of federal screw-ups. This one is near and dear to my heart. It's about the pipe bomber. So we're going to do that. Make sure you stick around. And if you have not checked in here, You might want to do it on video because we're going to show the video. I clipped out about 7 or 8 minutes of which we'll watch a good chunk of it because I need you guys to see what it is. We're going to kind of skip around. We'll do something we don't normally do, which is narration over video. It's just security camera footage. It's truly wild stuff. So make sure you share this thing around. We're about to blow some minds. And kind of the spoiler is, I don't know how you justify the Capitol Police behavior and whether or not they were part of what was going on. At least the cover-up part of it. So really, really wild stuff. All right, let's start with a little promo for my friends at Catholic Vote. And you guys can follow them on social media. It's at Catholic Vote, just spelled out. They're putting out some really good stuff about abortion, which is obviously an issue that Donald Trump has tried to stay out of. JD Vance out there talking about it on the stump, saying we're not going to do a nationwide abortion ban, even if it came across our desk. We don't want it. CatholicVote.org is pushing for faith, family, and freedom. They are covering stories that are important to you. And they are doing so at CatholicVote.org. You guys can sign up for the Loop, which I get every morning. I reached out to the editor last night and said, hey, I think one of your links was bad. They're very responsive to me, but you guys can actually get points. You can get free hoodies and T-shirts and stuff if you share the Loop. So if you are already getting the Loop, make sure you're sharing it. Look at your email from this weekend and push out that link so that people can also get the Loop, but you can also get some prizes. I think if you get it's like 20 people sign up for it, you get a T-shirt or a hoodie or something like that. It's about to get cold, so that'll be kind of cool. Nice folks, good people, support our program and make it happen. So make sure you're supporting them as well. It doesn't cost anything to be part of the Loop, and you will get really good information, which we're going to cover some of it today. We did a live stream about this. I'm going to touch on it real briefly. Let me just throw this on the screen here. This was something that came out and that I thought was very interesting, and I have to correct my previous statements on Friday that I did to our locals audience. Tamori Morgan is apparently a female, which makes some sense based on the name Tamori, although who could tell today? United States versus Tamori Morgan was a machine gun case. It was a simple possession of what they call a switch on the back of a Glock, and also a very inexpensive, what we call the poverty pony, which is the Anderson Manufacturing's AR-15, and it was in 30 cal, so probably a 300 blackout gun. And that gun was converted to a machine gun unlawfully, according to 18 U.S.C. 922, which prohibits the possession of a machine gun, just the possession, if it is not actually properly registered under the National Firearms Act of 1934. 922 Oscar was the statute, and the Kansas District Court ruled that based on the Second Amendment, they are granting the defense motion to dismiss. They said the government did not meet the burden to show that it is within the historical tradition of the United States to enforce a machine gun possession ban, and that that you can't simply go after it. Maybe a tax evasion is something you could go after, but not 922 Oscar. This flies in the face. I told you the other day, anything that dismantles 922 is important to me as a former federal agent. I think it's very important to you as a person who has civil liberties that are not to be infringed upon. We're going to talk about the First Amendment a little bit later, and probably in just a couple minutes. The issue is that these rights are not granted by government, and you need to make sure that you put your head in the proper space and realize that. The government does not grant you rights. The government has to recognize your pre-existing rights. It is a novel concept that the United States federal government and the way that the Constitution is structured is meant to acknowledge pre-existing rights, and they cannot be withdrawn outside of some very, very intense circumstances. It's my personal belief that even if you are someone who has previously been convicted of a felony, either you are safe to walk amongst us and have your rights, or you are not. And if you are not, then you don't get to come out of prison. You don't get to leave whatever the island that we lock you away from society because you're too dangerous. And if you are allowed back, and if we do have rehabilitation, then your firearm rights and your voting rights and all the other things, you should be a citizen or not. We cannot have two tiers of citizenship in the United States, which is why I'm a Second Amendment absolutist, and is why I say that even the idea that we would legalize it for illegal aliens, they should be deported under the status that says they can't be in the country. But we can't go after them simply for firearm rights, because if they can say, well, this person might be illegal, so therefore we're going to go look into them, we're going to take their guns, it is a pry bar. Every single one of these things are pry bars for the government to get into places that they have no business being, because you have a pre-existing right. And the Second Amendment under the Bill of Rights precludes the government from getting involved. They cannot regulate your speech. They cannot go out there and get involved in your ownership of property. They have to go get a warrant, and they have to show probable cause. And by the way, that should be a default position where the judge says, no, there is not probable cause. We should see far more search warrants denied than we do. We should. The judges should push back. They give an awful lot of credibility to the fact that you're in law enforcement and therefore you have the right answer. What we're seeing today in this current iteration of our republic is that law enforcement by default does not have the right answer. We saw it in 2020 and 21. It's one of the major problems that I had with what I was doing with the FBI. Looking around, I said, my colleagues are not going to stand up. I will. I'm happy to lose my job over this. The oath doesn't say that you get to have a paycheck. It says you must do the right thing. All enemies, foreign and domestic, that you must bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution. So I believe that me and the suspendables did that. The boys and I did exactly what we were told we were going to do. And if it costs us a job, so what? Who wants to be the person that looks back and says, I was a good American, I followed orders? And I'm using that in air quotes, good American. In the same way we talk about the good Germans who followed the Nazi routine, despite the fact that they probably didn't agree with them. They were like, well, the alternative is I rock the boat and I lose my paycheck and I don't get that pension and my health care benefits go away and my kids and I are going to have to find some other way to make a living and eat and live. It sucks to be you. It sucked to be me. I can tell you, my family went through a lot of heartache for it. Garrett's family, Garrett O'Boyle, went through a lot of heartache for it. Steve Friend, a lot of heartache. Chris Toompas, a lot of heartache, because all they said was, I will not do the thing that you've said, because it leads down a tyrannical and genocidal path. And we are seeing it happen right now. It is currently going on. Let me throw this article up on the screen here. In any case, the machine gun is a victory. It's a victory for all people. I don't know that it'll stick. My buddies who are in the firearm space that do that, they basically said it's not going to stick, that it'll get overturned in the 10th Circuit. That may be a case, and the Supreme Court doesn't have the balls to take it up. That may be the case, but we've been shocked before, especially with the advent of this overturn of Chevron doctrine, which was in place basically since 1984. We're rolling some things back. That's not terrible. How about this? This just came out of Surprise, Arizona. It's worth covering. My folks live in Arizona, so I'm a little bit more sensitive to Arizona politics than I might otherwise be. A surprise arrest. Surprise arrests. Isn't that a funny way of saying it? An activist, after she criticized people at the city council meeting. Can they do that? The answer is, of course, no, they cannot do that. Well, the answer is yes, they can do it, but it is still unconstitutional. And so those who were engaged in it, I hope they face some liabilities. There's a lot of folks online that are asking, well, what legal organization is going to step up and defend them pro bono? Who are you to ask that? What you're saying is that some lawyers should donate their time. What is your skin in the game? You're an American citizen. Should we run a GoFundMe? I'm more than happy to do it. I'll try to reach out to this lady if that's feasible. If anybody has contact with her, if nobody else wants to promote it, I'll help and I'll contribute. They need to sue the city of Surprise because of this. Here's the video. You guys can enjoy it for a moment. It's a little bit long. It's worth watching all the way up until the scream at the end. Today's going to be a little video heavy. So once again, one of the great reasons for you guys to either join us on Locals at KyleSeraphin.com or join us on Rumble, rumble.com/KyleSeraphin. Make sure you've liked and shared the video at that time. But let's watch this video of this poor woman.
Numerous public records requests that I have open right now that are, quote, pending legal review that I am entitled to request.
I've got to interrupt you here because...
Okay, are you going to stop the timer?
This is the public meeting forum that you agree to when you speak, and I want to read this to you, that there are oral communications during the city council meeting may not be used to lodge charges or complaints against any employee of the city or members of the body, regardless of whether such person is identified in the presentation by the name or by any other reference that tends to identify him or her.
That's all fine, well and good, but that's a violation of my First Amendment rights.
Yeah, so that's, well, this is your warning, okay?
A warning for what?
A warning for attacking the city attorney personally.
This is all factual information.
It doesn't matter.
You're violating my First Amendment rights.
This is what you agree to when you... for speaking. This is the form.
It is unconstitutional, Mayor Hall.
Well, it's not unconstitutional.
It is.
And if you're
the Supreme Court has upheld. I could get up here and I could swear at you for 3 straight minutes, and it is protected speech by the Supreme Court. It is.
No, you can't.
Why don't you look at case law?
No, you can't.
I can.
So if you want to be
also the chair is engaged in the debate. So point of order.
Do you want to be escorted out of here? Do you want to be escorted out of here?
You're violating my First Amendment rights.
Talking.
You are violating my First Amendment rights.
That's your opinion.
It's not a matter of opinion.
Do you want to be escorted out, Ms. Massey? Because that's what's going to happen. And it's going to happen in the future also. Anytime you attack
That's why you changed the rules.
Or any
That's why you changed the rules.
This has been on the back of this form.
I understand, Mayor Hall, but that is completely unconstitutional.
No, it's
You're
not.
Also engaging in debate, and so you should actually be yielding the floor to somebody else managing.
Chief, could you have somebody come down here and escort Ms. Massey out?
Really? Is that necessary?
Yes, I
In
think
front
it
of my
is.
10-year-old daughter, you're going to escort me
That's
out
fine.
for expressing my
She
First
can go
Amendment
with you.
rights.
She can go with you.
I'm not leaving.
Well,
I'm expressing my first. Do not touch me. Do not put your hands on me.
You just step out with me.
Do not put your hands on me.
Come on out.
Do not put your hands on me.
Come out with me now before you get arrested. Do you understand?
Are you detaining me?
Yes.
Why am I being detained? Under what charges? Under what charges?
okay, so
Hey, I have personal property. Hold on. You cannot touch me.
yeah, I know. She can go out there. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to go into E-session.
Motion to go into E-session?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We're going into E-session.
All right. And is the typical refuge of the weak and the stupid? They ran into E-session. That's executive session where they can kick everybody out and they don't have to listen to anyone else. You guys are seeing what our chat is saying right now on Rumble and on all the other sites combined on the left side of the screen right now. Yep. That's what's going on. They ran to the place where they don't have to deal with the citizens. And here it is. New York Times v. Sullivan, 1964. She said there's case law. Of course there is. Supreme Court, in an opinion written by Justice Brennan, reviewed the matter against the background of a profound national commitment to the principles that debate on public issues should be uninhibited, robust, wide, and open, and that it should include vehement, caustic, and sometimes unpleasantly sharp attack on government and public officials. They actually ended up sort of citing that there was a possibility for you to be found in on the wrong side of the law with that, if you engaged in slanderous information, if you published libel, and so on. The other thing is there's another court case out there, which is going to be known as Cohen v. California, 1971. And it said that, as she stated, I can get up there and swear at you if I want. I can get up there and swear for three, four minutes if I'd like to. And the state's, the primary holding of that particular case is that the state has to have more of a concern than just generally disturbing the public if they ban expletives in a public space. So there is case law, and she is correct. And she did know her civil liberties. And she did know that she had a right to that, and the government has no ability to infringe on it. And yet, the government actually physically can infringe as long as it doesn't have people obeying their oath. It's required that the good people who work for the government actually do the job. You cannot default support government positions because they oftentimes are weak. And you saw a cop go out there and bend the arm of a woman. She's 32 years old. She's obviously a mother as well. I have no idea if I agree with anything she says, but she has a right to say so. That's what America was founded on. We can have vigorous debate, and you have to handle scrutiny if you're a public official. Now, this is the case in a lot of small Arizona areas. My folks live in Payson, Arizona, and they are dealing with people that do the same sort of things, are trying to hide. Why aren't they standing up? Why aren't you standing up? Why don't you ask the question, all of you? I just saw you guys in the chat. B, I saw you. Why aren't they standing up? Which one of you is ready to lose your job first? Who's going to be the person that's on jury duty? We saw this in North Carolina where a man said, I'm not going to wear a mask. And instead of all the jurors in the jury box standing up and saying, I won't either. Arrest all of us. Send us all to jail for contempt. He ended up spending the night in jail for contempt and no one else did. Why? Because the first person always takes the most rounds going through the door. And most people see that and they learn the opposite lesson. Not that they can't kill us all. They learn the lesson that says, I don't want to end up like that person. And so the example is very effective. And it always has been. Cowardice is more common. Freeze is more common than fight or flight. You better decide right now if you want to be somebody who's going to be in the front and is going to take whatever that involves. My family's done it. I'm not speaking from a position of someone who has not taken that burden on myself, and I'm surrounded by people who have. Her name was Rebecca Massey. She was 32 years old. She was arrested on Tuesday night on suspicion of trespassing, a Class 3 misdemeanor. Obviously, that's nonsensical. The mayor, Skip Hall, does not get to decide whether or not she is allowed to speak, but that's what happened, and the police backed their play. They've charged her with an additional misdemeanor charge of resisting arrest and obstructing government operations. It carries up to a 30-day jail sentence and $500 in fine. Penalties for a Class 1 misdemeanor are $2,500. And 6 months in jail. This is all reporting according to azcentral.com, which is not easy to get unless you have unless you use the archive feature. They're out there. They're pushing this. They understand this. I have no idea what Skip Hall's policies are, but they're totalitarian. The left and the right. I always tell people that the spectrum is not left and right on a linear experience. It's a circle. And at the top of the circle is tyranny. The tyranny is authoritative. It is fascism. It is totalitarian communism. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's the government is involved in all your business, left or right. You can get there either way. The route is always the same. It's whenever you push too far from one side or the other, you end up at the top of the circle, and the top of the circle is the enemy. The bottom is probably complete chaos and anarchy. And somewhere either here at like 7:30, 8 o'clock on the left, and the same thing over here at about 4 o'clock, 3:30, 4:30 on the right, is that balance that has the least amount of government touch and allows us to live freely. America is out of balance right now. And that's proven by the unserious people that continue to push the agenda. I'm going to show you the video. I promised this on Friday and I didn't play it, so I've got it queued up and I will play it for you. This is Taylor Lorenz, someone from the Washington Post who does social media commentary, which already makes me want to blow my brains out. There's no other way to say. I despise this sort of meta coverage of social media and that this is a full-time job. This is a grown woman who's my age. And this is what she does. And she sounds like a flippant teenager, probably because she doesn't have the burden of taking on children and doing what human beings have always done. Procreate and move the species forward. So here she is talking about the hotties for Harris. If you've seen these hotties, they're not hotties. They're not hotties at all. They're gross. And there was a couple of experiments done on social media over the weekend saying, hey, women, liberal women, we're just as attractive as conservative women. Show what you got. And it was a mixture of not very attractive women, mediocre attractive women, and about 30% men dressed as women, or not at all, just dressed as men, wearing like tube tops and weird stuff. It's pretty gnarly. Here's the hotties for Harris kind of take. Listen to the priorities. They want to make this thing about these fringe issues, tampons and so on. I think Republicans need to resist that. Just get right on the economy and right on the crime and right on the border. And that's all you need to be able to talk about. Let's get real serious about this. Like I said, 40 days out. Here's Taylor Loren.
Taylor's filling us in on some of the DNC highlights since we haven't been able to get into the convention. And what did you get as a party favor?
So, I was at the Hotties for Harris party last night, which was a party a bunch of people went to. And it was like, they had like all of these different sort of things. They had like mini golf where like you go mini golf through like a ring of tampons and stuff. And then I went through, then there was like a gumball machine. And I was like, oh, let me turn the gumball machine and, maybe it's like a ring or something. And it was, I have this, it was Plan B. It's a Plan B pill.
It's a Plan B gumball machine. It gives out abortion pills. You know how dark that is? I listened to a great little video short. I'll throw it on social media. I'll push it up later. It was a video short talking about how abortion is the inverse of the sacrifice of the cross. And it takes the concept of this is my body and I'm giving it for the world, the words of Jesus Christ, and it applies it to a woman saying, this is my body and I'll do what I want with it. It's the inverse. It's a demonic inverse of the sacrifice of the cross. For those of you who are Christian, or at least understand the Christian ethos that exists in this country, that should mean something. They have basically celebrated something that makes no sense whatsoever. And it's antithetical to female existence. It devalues women. And they're giving out Plan B. And then she goes on and talks about it a little bit later on in that video. And she's like, I wasn't sure if it was real. Like, I just wanted to keep it because it was clever. And it was interesting. Like, it might be valuable. Maybe I can sell it, which, by the way, selling off a pharmaceutical is illegal in this country. Not that I think it should be. I don't think the government needs to get involved in that business. But end of the day, what a gross example of how these people are thinking about things. These people have tried to seize the conversation and turn it into something that it ought not to be. Again, if the Republicans can simply capture the appropriate messaging on what the policies are that actually affect people who are dumb and don't care and are not paying attention to a podcast like this and not reading the news, and they basically wake up on November 4th and go, oh man, I guess we're having an election tomorrow. I better figure out how to go do that, and I'm going to vote. I'm going to vote even though I'm uninformed and I know nothing and I haven't been keeping track of the news. There are many of them, and those are the people that swing the elections. And maybe they're like this. I continue to argue, and it's a very elitist position. I'll grant you that. that there are many people in this country that are too dumb to have the right to vote. I just don't think there should be that. I'm anti-democratic in that way. I always talk about the fact that the republic exists for a reason. Our country was structured on purpose in order to remove. I used to get frustrated when I was a kid because I was like, wait a minute. They created a fail-safe in order to basically subvert the will of the people in the country and say, okay, well, we're just going to do the right thing because we know better. Once I started understanding what it actually meant, because it's always presented to you that the Electoral College is this anti-democratic thing. No, the Electoral College is supposed to, one, make the president not as important as the legislatures of the states and the legislatures of the nation, which is why Article 1 is how they set up Congress. The Senate and the House are supposed to be set up to be the superior of the branches. The president is like the one who just carries out the orders. So that's important. I would like far less. And when I started realizing that the purpose of the Electoral College is to make sure that the president represents the majority of the states, not the majority of the people writ large, because people used to think of themselves as being part of their state first, because the states actually had real power. And as we continued to see the degradation of state power and a subversion of the 10th Amendment, as the federal government creeps into everything under the Interstate Commerce Clause. It's one of the reasons that machine gun law is very interesting, that machine gun ruling, rather. It states that the Commerce Clause is not a good exception. It's not a good reason for the federal government to get involved in machine guns. It's a fundamental lack of understanding just the basic civics of this country that has led Americans to laziness and stupidity. And then you got this person, and this lady's vote counts as much as mine. Why should it? Why should it count as much as mine when she's dim-witted and doesn't understand anything?
Do women have rights in Gaza?
They should have rights in Gaza. And
do they?
I am saying that they should have rights in Gaza. Okay, so you sound like you are in favor of, like you feel like women have more rights under the Israeli.
Absolutely, yeah, they do absolutely have more rights.
Okay, I think we've got a political disagreement here.
Do you agree that Israeli women have more rights than Gazan women?
I don't know that they necessarily do.
Again, like women can leave their houses in Israel without permission of a man.
I'm going to end this conversation now.
If you couldn't see what was written on her shirt because you were listening to this program, this is a heavy-set, dark-skinned woman. I assume she's black, but I don't know for a fact. And black shirt, white lettering that says feminist socialist or socialist feminist. Hard to say. So, like a brilliant person, like a really smart lady who doesn't know what goes on in Israel, who doesn't know what goes on in Gaza, who doesn't really have any facts. She just has feelings and opinions, and her opinions and her feelings can be translated into the ballot box, and they count just as much as mine or yours. You know whose opinions are actually worth more than ours, and this is not righteous? What you're seeing on the screen right now, the man who looks weak with a kind of paltry beard and the stupid hair, is a researcher for the Southern Poverty Law Center. Used to work for the University of Wisconsin and then took a job at SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center, and does a research against extremism, which is whatever they term it is. You guys remember that SPLC was the ones that said that Catholics can be extremists if they hold certain views about the Latin Mass, then those people are radical traditionalist Catholics and they are a problem. The person that is closest to me on the screen is a young man, 20 years old, soldier at Fort Bragg, also known as Fort Liberty, apparently. And the statement is we will fight. This is a soldier, an American soldier in the U.S. Army, waging war against America from Fort Liberty. This researcher, PhD loser, has decided to run down a bunch of internet chat and outed this kid to the FBI in order to get rid of this kid from the Army, facing charges for lying to a federal officer because he was part of Patriot Front. Another example of exactly what is going on in this country when you start criminalizing speech. Now, he's not accused of doing any violence. He's accused of lying on his enlistment forms and saying that he was never part of an organization that advocated the overthrow of the United States, which I've read all of Patriot Front's manifesto material, and I don't see it. Are they racist? Absolutely. Do they have bad ideas and stupidity? 100%. Are they probably infiltrated by a number of confidential human sources and all of their, chats and so on? Yes, but they don't get engaged in violence, and they're not interested in overthrowing the United States, at least not from what they've said publicly, and I haven't seen any evidence otherwise, nor was there any presented in this particular warrant. That kid may be garbage, and he may be a racist jerk. And anybody who's been in the Army, who's been in the Air Force, who's been in the Navy, served in the Marine Corps, if you worked in Coast Guard, if you were in the military as an enlisted person, you know that there's like a mixture of dumb people out there, no doubt about it. We need some of them too, it turns out. And it doesn't really matter what their ideas are as long as they do their job, follow orders, and do what they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do it. And they understand that there is a limit to their authorities, and they don't go out there and enact things that are dangerous or unlawful, immoral, unconstitutional, and so on. And then you get this beta male wearing a tie here, sitting there taking a selfie with his 3 days of scruff, or maybe that's 10 weeks of him trying to grow a beard and failing. I don't know. Maybe he has just low testosterone. And he's able to advocate, because this is what happened. The SPLC was able to advocate and get the FBI to go out and arrest somebody. Because the FBI is doing the bidding, not just of people on the political left, but on the aggressive and lunatic fringe of the political left. When you start getting the government to enact your tyrannical ideas, you are really close to what is called fascism. That's what it looks like. It reminds me of The Big Lebowski, where like the cop is sitting there in Malibu, and the guy's like, "Effing fascist," and he throws the cup and hits him in the head. You can't throw cups and hit people in the head and tell them to get out of your beach community. And you can't go tell the FBI, "Hey, I think this guy's a problem because I don't like what he says online." And the FBI goes and arrests him. But that is what happened in this country. We are so much closer to 1930s Weimar Republic Germany than anybody realizes. And the good Americans are the problem. The Americans that are willing to go along with things that they know are wrong and do them anyway. It keeps happening. Here, I'll do a plug for my friends over at Shield Arms at the moment. You guys can look at them. If you're not armed, you should be armed. If you carry a Glock, you should look into Shield Arms and check out their magazines, shieldarms.com. Use the promo code Kyle, K-Y-L-E. You'll save 5% site-wide. We just negotiated this out to make sure you guys get a good deal. I have several of their magazines. I carry them every single day in my Glock 43X, which is an MOS version. I also have this folding stock AR-9, which I'll go out and get some rounds on. Obviously, the one you see is suppressed. They make an outstanding product, and they upgrade them. It's a company that is by shooters. They are both shooters. The two owners of the companies shoot, and probably at a level that you cannot. One of them is a former Army marksmanship unit guy. The other guy was a competitive shooter at the national level. And you guys can go to shieldarms.com shieldarms.com and use promo code KYLE. Save yourself 5%, including on firearms, which is pretty sweet. They make some really great stuff, especially that folding AR. It makes it a game changer as far as transportability. If you're interested, get a folding pistol in 5.56 and whatever you like, you'll like it. It's a good one. Okay, let's keep pushing forward here. This is what's at stake. And this is, who is this? ABC, I think, talking about this. Kamala Harris is basically it's ABC. She's the sitting VP, but she's also the candidate of change, how Kamala Harris is having it both ways. The reason she's having it both ways, of course, this is coming from the Associated Press, so this is a reprint on ABC from the AP. She's the sitting vice president. She's been in office for 3.5 years, but she's getting the candidate of change. She's the reform candidate, but she's also the incumbent. Ain't that something? And the way she does it is because the media is complicit in sharing this nonsense. That's why you get a vibes campaign. In every presidential cycle, you have to run either on experience or on the fact that you're fresh. Donald Trump running on the fresh, like, hey, there's a contrast. We're actually in a very rare moment where a former president is running for president. So you actually have the contrast of what would Donald Trump do as president. And I would encourage, let's just assume that we give a pass. Let's assume we give a pass to 2020, which I'm not real crazy about, but let's assume we did. December, November of 2019, where you were looking at the Christmas of 2019. How was that sitting for your family? How was your mortgage? How was your Christmas purchases? What was it to fill your gas tank? Objectively more affordable than it is today. There is a look maybe to lower rates, which may actually have the opposite impact and raise the cost of housing even further in this country as people now get into a bidding war because people have been waiting to buy a home until the mortgage rates go down. And when they do, it may actually drive some of these inflated prices even worse. That's a real possibility. So she's sitting here in this place that makes no sense. And the only reason it happens is because they've propped her up. And she doesn't know a lot. I'm going to show you a thing that there's basically a kind of a vying now for the blue collar, the labor workers, the people who generally speaking in labor unions vote Democrat because the Democrats have cozied up to them so much, but they don't represent the values of people who actually do those damn jobs. So here she is talking about collective bargaining. This is Kamala. This is coming from like a TikTok or something like that. She doesn't seem to understand the thing. Doesn't make her dangerous because whoever her speechwriter is that wrote that speech for Thursday was very effective. And we don't have people that are making good decisions. It's hotties for Harris. It's, I think women in Gaza should have more rights. So whether they do or not, I'm going to go out there and be mad at Israel, even though I have no idea what's going on in that conflict because I'm a feminist socialist. Those people get to vote too. It's another argument for the Electoral College. Here's Kamala talking about collective bargaining. Seems difficult. Like I said, evaluate them by what they say, but also by the results. She's got 3.5 years of it right now, and they're not good.
You literally cannot make this up.
Collective bargaining is about saying, let the collective come together around a common experience, which at its core is about dignity and the dignity of labor. That's right. And then let the people come together to negotiate so you make the balance. And then the outcome will be fair. What?
The outcome will be fair when it's about the dignity of labor. No, that's not what's going on in labor negotiations. Collective bargaining means that you all get together and you all say, we have these issues that we would like addressed. And because we were all acting in unison, the company must address them or lose all those workers, theoretically, who will in solidarity walk away and not do the job. And because all the people together at the same time constitute a much larger negotiating position than any one individual, it's hard to replace them. And so the company is more inclined to say, okay, we're going to cave on these things. We're going to give you a paid lunch break or whatever the hell the issues are. It's not about the value of work. Nobody is ever negotiating about the value of work and respect my dignity. They're saying, here are some concrete things. I would like to be paid this much amount per hour because this is what our time is worth. And the company has the right to say, nah, we don't think so. We're going to get rid of all of you and hire someone else. It's a negotiation. And it has to be, both sides have to come out as losing slightly or everybody kind of wins a little bit. We have to be intelligent about what we're talking about. She doesn't have any interest in doing that. So what's really funny is even when they say these things, they actually go back on their word. I'm going to focus on Chicago for just a little bit. There's no other reason not to. Chicago was the site of the DNC, right? Chicago had some pretty awful things. Let's do this. Let's see if I got a little clip. How about this? How about the crime stats for August and the crime stats of the DNC week? So we are now we're coming into the last week of August, which means that there were 4 weeks in August. DNC week was the 18th to the 24th. According to Hey Jackass, which is a website I go to all the time, and if you guys want to go see what's going on in Chicago, it illustrates Chicago values, tongue-in-cheek kind of website. They got my sense of humor. There were 76 people shot in that week. In 7 days, they averaged more than 10 people a day being shot. Total homicides, 20. 19 of them shot and killed, which means one person was killed by some other means. 20 people were killed in 7 days while the DNC was going on. And month to date, the beginning of the month till now is 47, which means just shy of 50% of the homicides happened during the DNC week. How much culpability should the Democrats have for the people that were killed because the police were not on the streets in the place they otherwise would be? And if you don't ever keep track of these shot counters, they get really, really bad. A person is murdered on average every 14 hours and 5 minutes in the city of Chicago up to this point in the year. And someone is shot about little bit less than every 3 hours. There are more homicides in Chicago in a 5-year period than there were the entire Iraq interaction that we had. I'm sorry, not the Iraq, the Afghanistan invasion and the occupation of Afghanistan. We lost more people, Americans in the United States, in Chicago than all of the service members in 20 years of war. In about 5 years. That's how long it takes. It's shocking. The numbers are absurd. And the number of casualties are even worse. Casualties measure in the roughly 2,000 to 2,500 on any given year. That's the people that have been shot, but not killed, but are probably ruined and have all kinds of difficulty in recovering. I mean, folks, it's a flippin' war zone. Legitimately more aggressive than the hot wars the United States has been involved in. So what are they doing about it? This little clip went viral. There's a bunch of people that have kind of chopped it up. I'm going to play a version of it. This is a guy in Chicago who's one of those people that the DNC has tried to criminalize and said that they're the real problem because they have money and they're rich. They own a building and they're turning a business. Newsflash, America runs on businesses that actually turn a profit. How about this guy? He owns a 10-unit apartment complex that has little 1-bedroom apartments. And now the only way that he's going to be able to make money is by renting them out for $5,000 to $6,000 a month. Look at this. You tell me if you're going to pay $5,000 for this apartment.
This 700 square foot one bedroom apartment will now cost Michael Markellos $17,494 in property taxes for 1 year. Markellos and his mother own this 10 unit Lincoln Park apartment complex. Last year's tax bill for all 10 units combined was $23,674. But now look at this. The same 10 units are now $128,282 this year, up 440%.
I was outraged. These are basically simple one-bedroom apartments for people, college graduates who work downtown.
The majority of the annual increases are from the latest installment of tax bills just sent out at the beginning of December. The payment is due before the end of the year, and in just a few months, another installment of taxes will be due.
Merry Christmas and Happy Valentine's Day.
Markellos says the only way to pay for the recent tax hike would be to raise the rent on the one-bedroom apartments. The increase, he says, would scare renters away.
They have to go up to $5,000, $6,000 to pay all the bills.
And no one's going to pay that.
Well, who in their right mind is going to pay for it?
Markellos.
Okay, just so you guys get a sense of what he was talking about, the cost in taxes, property taxes per apartment, is about $1,500 a month. It's $1,460 a month. That's what that $17,000 and change looks like per unit. So $1,500 just to pay the government's cut. You want to talk about a protection racket. And by the way, if you don't pay it, then the government repossesses your building, don't they? You're paying rent to them. So we're talking about $1,500 a month just to pay the taxes. Then there's whatever upkeep and maintenance is required because there is a cost to running a business. And if you've ever had a rental property, you know there's always hidden stuff, especially when other people who don't love it like you do live in it. They destroy things. So you've got to maintain the common spaces, the common areas. You've got to have somebody handle the facade. You've got to have whatever, the mechanical. If there's an elevator, even if it's just lighting fixtures, there's got to be someone that comes in and checks this out, someone who cleans the common spaces. This is always part of it. So now you're in for whatever that costs, divided by 10. And that's just to break even. Unbelievable. The mayor of Chicago said that he was not going to raise taxes to be able to meet all of his stupid programs. Remember, they went after a radical leftist, someone that was even further left than Lori Lightfoot. They've got a mayor that said that he thought it was the easy way out to raise taxes on property taxes, that was laziness. And then you have that story.
Let me just ask you then, it sounds great on paper, but how do you pay for it? Chicago, as you know, is headed towards a major deficit in 2024. You say you're not going to raise taxes, but you have talked about perhaps other ways of raising money, including property taxes.
Well, so I'm not going to raise property taxes. That's been the lazy form of governance for a very long time in the city of Chicago and, quite frankly, around the country. The words that President Biden indicated in his union address, he said that a teacher and a firefighter should not pay the same tax rate as a millionaire and a billionaire.
So Mr. Mayor-elect, you're not going to raise property taxes, but you will have to raise taxes?
Well, what we're going to have to do is to find the revenue from individuals who have the means to actually contribute to a safer city. Look, the bottom line is this. We have large corporations. 70% of large corporations in the city of Chicago, in the state of Illinois, did not pay a corporate tax. 70% of large corporations in the state of Illinois did not pay a corporate tax. And it's that type of restraint on our budget that has caused the type of disinvestment that has led to poverty. Of course, that has led to violence.
Oh, you know what else is going on? Vandals attacking pro-life pregnancy centers. Is that person violating the FACE Act that said the clinic is, I don't even know what this says on there. It's just nonsense. Clinic dead, red paint thrown everywhere, trying to scare off women that might want to go in there and actually have their baby, God forbid. Catholic Vote reporting on this one. You guys can check it out. It's also in the Washington Examiner. The story is essentially that this place was called Aid for Women. It's pursuant to the Catholic teachings. It is a crisis pregnancy center that does not abort babies, but refer women to get abortions, but tries to help them out. Women who show up in deep problems and are looking for a way out to be able to keep their baby. And it was attacked. And we actually heard people on the left say, well, we're going to also defend these crisis pregnancy centers. We actually heard some statements coming forward from the DOJ. Well, yeah, we're totally fair and balanced, and we totally look at these. We know it's not the case. And the vandalizing of these things, if you guys want to keep track of them, go to my buddies over at Catholic Vote. You'll see how many of them there are. So this is what it looks like. Lawlessness, taxes that are at a rate that you can't make a profit on your business? Like, is that guy going to continue to offer housing? We already apparently have a housing crisis. You know who can afford to pay that kind of money? The government, because the government is the one that's raising it. But the government doesn't have any money. What you're seeing is in certain cities, what happens when you run out of OPM, other people's money. And when you do it, it's the same problem that Margaret Thatcher talked about. It's the reason why socialism and communism don't work. It's the reason why that lady who's talking about what rights look like in Gaza, why their vote shouldn't be worth as much as mine. It's fairly shocking. And how dumb are these people? This is a really good example. Half of TikTok users under 30 say they use it to keep up with politics and news. You know TikTok, that place where people are known to go up there and share really useful information. Young adults stand out as TikTok is their source of information. Now, my generation was just as dumb. A lot of people were going to The Daily Show to get their information. But at least some of the stuff they say is actually true. Are they biased? Of course. You want to hear something kind of fun? How about this? This is Jon Stewart breaking down the DNC. I'm telling you, I saw the DNC and the last day of it gave me shivers down my spine. It makes me very, very concerned that there's a high likelihood that it will get rigged the way it needs to because it's about vibes, it's about feelings, and feelings do not care about numbers. And the fact that it's statistically illogical for Kamala Harris to get the kind of votes that they're going to need doesn't mean that they won't do it. Jon Stewart's actually pointing this thing out. Like I said, my generation used to go to comedy and still get at least some real biting criticism. He's at least pointing out what's happening. Jon Stewart taking a good take.
They had a guy yelling, "Screw the billionaires," followed immediately by a very happy billionaire. It's all okay if it's our billionaire. I don't like billionaires, but he's all right. They had guys making fun of people for going to Yale, and a bunch of people who went to Yale. The Democrats had people who prosecuted sexual predators and... There goes that booking.
And that booking, for those of you who are listening and didn't see, of course, they're showing J.B. Pritzker as the billionaire that's happy. They're showing Bernie Sanders, who hates billionaires and is talking about that. They've got the people who went to Yale, which is pretty much everybody that is of note in the historical Democrat Party. And then you have the sexual predator reference to Bill Clinton, who's on screen there while Jon Stewart is tightening and adjusting his tie. Catholic Vote also reporting this one over here. Supreme Court tightens Arizona voting requirements. Doesn't mean it'll work. But they've affirmed that you need a proof of citizenship. That's a totally reasonable thing for the state to do. And remember, the states are the ones that are actually supposed to administer the elections. And it turns out none of you have a right under the United States Constitution to vote for the president. I'm sort of down with the idea of going back to letting the state houses do it. We don't actually have that right. The way the Constitution was structured was actually brilliant. And we've been tinkering around with it to the point where it doesn't work the way it was supposed to. And everybody's surprised that the result is not as good as it used to be. You have to take it as it came. These adaptations, there's very small adaptations that I'm totally down with. Of course, it makes sense for us to recognize human beings as being human beings. That's not a problem I'm going to fight against. But the idea that we're supposed to say that everybody has a say and that all votes are equal, that's objectively not true. Go out there on the street and meet people. You'll meet a dozen people and you're like, hey, look, you're a nice person, but I don't think that you should be making decisions for me. You make terrible decisions for yourself. The guy that was at the pizza place that my family and I went to last night, he's working an hourly job. He's covered in tattoos. Thousands and thousands of dollars dumped into tattoos. You don't make good decisions. Now, if you happen to drive a nice car and you have a business and you want to go out there and spend your money on tattoos and support some local artists and you think that you're going to love the same thing today that you will in 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years, knock yourself out. You want it to face your temple? You want to put graffiti on it the same way you saw outside that abortion clinic, or the pregnancy center? Go for it. Yeah, kill yourself. Cover yourself up. Go wild. I don't mean kill yourself, obviously. But how about the danger of having that person have the same vote as me? I make good decisions, generally speaking. I'm financially solvent. I was able to stand up against the FBI. Why? because I made decisions before that said I'm not going to be indebted to the point where I don't have a choice and I'm going to make the decision between doing something tyrannical and feeding my children. I was like, no, I'm not going to do something tyrannical, even if it's tyrannical towards myself. I'm not going to go and drop into this. In any case, isn't that nice? Supreme Court, once again, they said that this will be continued litigation, but in the meantime, up until the point where this election goes down, this is a good enough law to go forward. And it says that, yeah, you're going to have to show proof of citizenship. We'll see how this plays out. Maybe that changes the game in Arizona. A lot of us know that it doesn't matter who's voting. It probably matters who's counting the votes. So, yikes. We're in bad space, but Americans are in a bad spot. I'm going to wrap up with the last two little stories that I've got here, and then we're going to do as long as it takes to cover Steve Baker's piece because it's really important. Here's the thing on the economy that should be covering down. CBS covering, they're not saying whose fault it is. They're really good about that, but Americans are having to choose between paying for food and energy bills. Forget decisions about whether or not you could do the wrong thing and support tyranny and do the right thing and lose your job. How about people that are basically out there deciding whether or not they're going to eat or have electricity? Which is a more and more serious problem. They're quoting the story of Stacey Friedman. She's the woman you see on there. She is the obese black woman. She's probably about 100 and something pounds overweight. We would call that morbidly obese in a medical sense. So to me, it's very interesting that her decisions are based on that. She's got so many emergencies happening in her life. Like I used to say this about people that we would get called 911. You're massively overweight. You're hypertensive. You're diabetic. Okay. You're in danger of stroking out. You're in danger of heart disease and so on. And they would call you, I would say that you shouldn't be able to call 911 in the same way that other people do because you're not having an emergency. You are an emergency. Your life is emergent. And at any moment, something bad could happen because of a bunch of predictably bad decisions and some that may be out of your hand. I don't know all of it. But I do know that when I would show up with an ambulance and we would look at somebody, it's like, of course you're having an emergency. Every minute of your day is an emergency. You're living at about like a 7 out of 10 on the crappiness scale. And today is an 8, which made you call 911. Meanwhile, like when I called 911, the last time I can remember doing it was a year ago today. Exactly a year ago today, about the same exact time, probably about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, local time. Because my newborn daughter, who was under 1 day old, decided to stop breathing and she turned blue. And I resuscitated her myself because otherwise, if I had waited for the ambulance, she'd be brain dead. She was breathing by the time the ambulance got there. That's the last time I called 911 and I didn't tie it up for something that was not going to be an actually out of the blue emergency. It was. I just wanted to make sure there was somebody who had blow by oxygen in case my kid didn't recover the way. And so she was fine and she's brilliant. And she's almost babbling and she's walking and she's a miracle. But that's the time that I called 911. Meanwhile, this lady, if you show up as a medic on that lady's house, you know her life's an emergency. It's like, what are your pre-existing conditions and what medications are you taking? I already know there's going to be a list. Why don't you just hand me the list you have on your fridge? In any case, they're talking about how the heat and they want to blame this on climate change. And this is my favorite. As a regional field organizer for Power Up NC, Freeman's job, she's actually paid to do this. The obese woman on the screen here. She's paid to do this. She helps people properly weatherize their homes, particularly in the Sandhills regions where she lives, and she works. And because there's poverty and rising temperatures, it makes residents vulnerable to the health impacts of climate change. No, people. It's not the vulnerability to the climate change health impact. It's the fact that when you live in poverty, most of your life decisions are made as a reaction. Poverty is a mindset. Being broke is different. I'm someone who has had negative $500 in my bank account for weeks on end, had nowhere to live, had no way to get around, didn't eat for like a week at a time. I'm not saying this without some understanding of what it looks like to be there, but I've never been in poverty. I've been broke. I've had no money. I've been homeless, literally no home. I was crashing on a couch for my brothers. So thankfully I had family to lean on. But poverty is a mindset. And if you accept that as a norm and don't try to make better decisions to fix things, then you're going to live like this lady who's talking about it's the climate. You're going to blame it on God? Maybe. Or maybe it's your failure to follow like some simple instructions. Because there is kind of a rule book. Joe Rogan talked about it. We brought it up on the show a while ago. There's a rule book. If you follow it, you're going to be better off. Check this one out. And yes, RFK is talking about our food killing us, so we may have that video as well, probably tomorrow. There's a lot of things that are wrong in our country. We used to be a proper country that actually had real food. Meanwhile, you used to be able to actually go out there and achieve an American dream. Could you not? Mortgage rates are falling. Here's what you need to know before buying a home. We're going to also cover tomorrow something about how the National Association of Realtors has had to redefine their rules. If you know anything about me, you know I don't much care for realtors. There are some that are an incredible value add. And I've had some really, really good realtors that have solved the problem for me. I've also had some entirely mediocre people that ask for way more money than they should ever deserve, because everybody wants a piece of the pie when you're talking about home sales, even though they have no skin in the game. They didn't put the money into it. They didn't maintain the property. They didn't sit there and make sure that they bought a property in the right area. They had nothing to do with any of it, but they show up and they're going to help you market it, and they want an exorbitant amount of money when it should probably be a flat rate. And if you're a realtor and you don't like me saying that, deal with it, because the movement is going to change. This is something that blows my mind. We are now talking about sort of the insanity of the fact that mortgage rates will drop and it'll still make housing prices go higher. You'll be able to afford more per month, which is what most people look at. But the possibility is that it's going to put more people into the market, and therefore there'll be more competition on the buying end. And this artificially inflated, government intervened industry is going to be more jacked up. And we are now going to deal with, we have the least affordable housing when it comes to home ownership in the history of the last 130 years in this country. And we showed that graph previously. Once again, dropping mortgage rates, they're looking like they've gone down just a little bit. They had a high of 7.79 as sort of the average. It's fallen to 6.46 right now. That's on your 30-year fixed mortgage. If you're a veteran and you have VA benefits, a little bit better than that. It's in the mid to high fives. But even so, that's at least 2 times more than what I had to pay when I bought my house in New Mexico in 2021. So very recent memory for some of us, especially some of us who lost a house over doing the right thing and saying government tyranny is not for me. They said we've seen a massive increase. This is the CEO of Better.com, says we've seen a massive increase in demand every time that interest rates come down. So we could actually start another round of bidding wars and another shortage of homes because there is more demand than there is in fact supply. And so even though you've got this sort of interesting thing that's happened with the National Association of Realtors, who knows if it's actually going to benefit the end user, the person who wants to buy a house. If you guys are thinking about leaving, don't leave now, because we're about to do the Blazer story and you are about to have your minds blown. Let me do one quick little thanks to my buddies over at Patriot Coolers who do sponsor our program. It's patriotcoolers.com. patriotcoolers.com. The promo code is KYLE. They'll save you 10% in a tight economy. That's a good thing. $50 or more, you're going to get free shipping. You get something that will keep you hydrated as the summer ends. It'll keep something hot. If you are going to sit on a stakeout in surveillance, if you're going to be doing anything like I used to do in the FBI, if you ride around in a car for a living, if you're delivering things, if you are a package person, if you are someone who has to make trips, if you're a realtor, you're going out and seeing your clients, you can appreciate a Patriot Cooler. It'll keep your beverages hot or cold for a very long time. They've got great hard-sided coolers, and we literally use them every single day in Texas, whether it's cold out or hot out. We're trying to keep our food at a stable temperature. We load up from Costco, and just recommend them highly. No one has ever bought one of their products and said, hey, you know what? You really led me astray. They do not. They make a great stuff. They're out of Houston, Texas. Fast shipping. Good stuff. Let's get wild. You guys ready to see some pipe bomber stuff? Because that's where I want to go with this. Let me make sure I throw this up on the screen. Here it is, attributed to Steve Baker, Joe Hanneman, formerly of the Epoch Times, now both of them at the Blaze and Blaze Media. The Capitol Police interacted with the suspect they call it, but we call subject, during the January 5th pipe bomb drop. We were told by the federal government that the pipe bomb was dropped by someone wearing a hoodie. You guys remember that hoodie? That person supposedly walked around, dropped off 2 pipe bombs, and when that happened, they identified him. What we didn't see is this video that we're about to show you, this video that the Blaze has found 100%. Steve Baker and I were talking about this last night. I don't see any way for you to excuse what this is. So here's the video, and I'm going to comment on it as we watch. We're going to see a lot of it here. Right now, what you're seeing on the screen is a still camera, a static camera, far better than the grainy images we saw. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you're about to see the subject in the hoodie. I'm going to just call that person hoodie. Don't know if it's a male or a female, walking underneath the Capitol Hill Club, underneath the awning. Watch the arm. There's a wave to a patrol. That's from U.S. Capitol Police, and a point. That took about 2.5 seconds. I've watched the video a lot. That SUV is going to circle the block and is going to go from the right-hand side of the screen up and around the buildings, around to the left, and come back and make a box, and going to enter on screen here on the left-hand side of the street. Now, this is a camera that is what's called PTZ, point, tilt, zoom. So you can move it and you can zoom in, and it's static and has been for quite a long time, apparently. How interesting. I'm going to skip ahead. The hoodie, the pipe bomber subject, is walking now sort of away from the camera. And now I'm going to show you, there's the lights. I just skipped ahead a few seconds. Those lights are that SUV that we just saw this person wave to. Hoodie waved to this SUV, Capitol Police SUV. Now it is parked about mid-block up the street and away from the camera. And it has the strobes on. First, it was cherries and berries, the top lights. This is the strobing of the headlights, which means the emergency lights were activated. And now suddenly someone is moving the damn camera, which means that this is a manned camera and not run by someone who knows how to use the camera. You're seeing that they're tilting around and looking for something. What are they looking for? They're going to hit the home button and it's going to go back to 0, and then they're going to have to do it again. You'll see in 1 second they hit the wrong button. This is probably a software controller. So they're zooming in and they're moving up the street. Looking for who? The hoodie? Looking for what? We don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But this is manually moved. They're going to mull back out. You'll see that there are 3 Capitol Police officers standing at the left there. This is the entrance to the Library of Congress, apparently. And there's a police car, also Capitol Police. This is going the opposite direction of the SUV, now heading up the street the same way that the hoodie subject walked. And they're trying to figure out where they want this camera. It's going to end up settling very similar to where it was. But what are they looking for here? And this is late at night. There's not very many people on the street, as you guys can see. You do see there are people, though. It's not totally unreasonable. And none of them are waving at the cops, it turns out. That wave looked like familiarity to me. It looked like someone that you knew, not just like, hey, I acknowledge you're a police officer and I'm a friendly, because I've done that a lot. It's like, you're my buddy and you're just getting off shift or you're just getting on shift. Now, here's the other thing. Now that police car that drove away from us and did a U-turn, what it did is a 3-point turn and pulled in behind the SUV on the left. I'm just telling you because I've seen this enough to be able to explain it. That patrol officer is now blocking and has the cherries and berries on, the top lights, obscuring what is they're right in front of, which is another Capitol Police officer kiosk. This is all coming from Steve Baker. And when you turn on your lights on these cameras, as you can see, it blurs out a lot of what you can see. And you know where that kiosk is? It's directly in front of the alley that leads into the RNC where the pipe bomb was dropped. And that's where the hoodie subject dropped in. We're going to move forward because the subject not only went down that alley, the subject is actually going to come out of the alley, and right in the middle of the screen, you can see there's a little white movement walking over to the patrol cars. The SUV crossing the street right now walks over to where the SUV is and walks over to where that other cop car pulled in and sits there for about 2.5 to 3 minutes. The so-called pipe bomb subject had an interaction with Capitol PD in front of a Capitol PD kiosk, like a permanent station, and is now standing, apparently, with the cops, and is there for a while. Now we're going to move forward a little bit forward in the video, so I'm just going to skip along. Just give me a break here for a sec, because what happens next is, after a couple of minutes of that, we're going to see the subject turn and walk back into the alley. So the person who supposedly dropped the pipe bombs not only interacted with Capitol Police officers prior to supposedly dropping the RNC bomb, but also decided to walk in the alley, come back out, hang out with the cops for a couple of minutes, and then roll back in. So is Capitol Police covering for someone? Is this their operation? I'm asking some real serious questions because it looks insane to me to think that these people did not know what was going on. And we may not be able to show you the video I may not get to the right spot of that person walking back, but crosses directly in front of the camera again and goes directly into the alley. I'm trying to see which version of the video. This is the long video. So you're going to see that this is the patrol. This is the 2 vehicles driving away. There's the SUV for Capitol Police, and there's the cop car that were sitting there, and they leave mission complete. Now, you've got to believe that the FBI saw this, and you've got to believe that the FBI went and interviewed those officers, and you've got to believe that that's never made it into the light of day. Some real serious questions that should be answered. I've never seen anything like that. Weren't we told that this person was the most terroristic actor on that day, that this person was involved in the single most dangerous thing that happened on that day, an indiscriminate dropping of pipe bombs? And that person who theoretically is doing something incredibly nefarious and really dangerous to their safety and also to their freedom, right? Because you're going to get locked up if you do that. Did that person literally wave, point, try to high five visually? You'll see in the video, or sorry, the picture that you're seeing static on the screen right now, the Capitol Police officer SUV hit their brakes, tapped the brakes a few times as this person walked by, waved, and they made the turn. I have no reasonable explanation of this that says that they didn't know each other. I've pointed and waved at a lot of cops. It looks like this, a little hand wave. Maybe you're on there. As my buddy Garrett and I were talking about last night, maybe you drive by some cop and you wave, you give him the hand, the windshield wave, you give him the hand on the top of the steering wheel wave. Maybe you do a head nod. But you're not doing something stupid like hitting your brakes or, swerving at them or waving like dramatically or pointing a bunch of times. That doesn't happen. Certainly not if you're trying not to call attention to yourself as you're walking around with two explosive devices that you're about to go drop. You do that for your friends. I used to walk down the FBI's ramp. We had a big parking garage in Washington, D.C. I'd wave at people that came in. If they looked at me and made eye contact, sure. Short wave. But if it was like my buddy, I might smack the back of their car as they drove by and like grab my shin, right? You're going to do something silly because it's someone you know. You call more attention to people you know them. I don't know any other way to explain that long wave and point and then coming back and hanging out. Some really damning stuff. And great work on the Blaze covering down on this thing because it is truly, truly important. I'm gonna wrap up with something a little bit lighthearted because it's kind of fun. I don't get it. I don't know how we ended up here. And then lastly, this is the last little thought here that touches back on my previous thing about Harris. She's in an uphill struggle and she's still doing fine. That should be a real problem for us because how on earth is she going to win over labor union workers? Maybe the bosses, but the people who actually work in factories and work in service industries, like they're more blue collar and they struggle more. And if they have any sense about what's going on, they know that they were better off under Donald Trump. There were more restaurants open. Pay was better. You could buy more with it. You could go and live on your own and you didn't have to go and worry about a $5,000 one-bedroom apartment in Chicago that you have to rent with a friend and both of you sleep on couches, right? So CBS is talking about the struggle here of how you try to get the workers. Man, I don't really care what the labor bosses say. What I care about is every individual because the labor boss's vote counts just as much as the person that's pulling the lever on the machine. And I don't see how that happens. And at the same time, I don't see her losing right now. And I keep telling you, I don't see a real election happening. And in 40 days, tuck in, folks. I think it's going to get weird and stupid. Make sure you've insulated yourself against it. I got some little palate cleanser here. We'll go ahead and go into the lighthearted piece. I had a video from the UK of them talking. They're having the same problems. I'll play that tomorrow for you. Let me just do a palate cleanse. This is a lighthearted take on self-reliance. Some of you know that is a pretty American virtue. Being able to take care of yourself, being able to do things for yourself. Maybe you should try farming. Is that what you're missing out on? This is a British guy telling us what we all kind of know, but I like the way he said it.
You want to make a bit of money? Get into farming. See this? I got this selling corn. Comes out of the fucking ground. I couldn't believe it. You see that? It's made of chicken. You kill it, you got free chicken. You can sell it to people. Or don't kill it. Fucking eggs come out of their arses. Fucking hell. It's wool. Pull it off, sell it, fucking grows back again. You cannot lose.
It's the nose tilt that I really like. Justice is Blonde says, be suspendable, 5 stars. Our 5-star review coming from Apple. You're my favorite fed up muckraker, calling out the lies from any and all directions. Keep exposing the malfeasance no matter how friendly the fire comes your way. Your unemotional approach to analysis and commentary is a unicorn in a world of media. The Sarah fans have assembled and will always have your back and the backs of the suspendables. Thanks for continuing to stick your neck out on behalf of the truth. It is my pleasure. I will continue to do so. This week, it doesn't seem like anybody else wants to do it, so we're going to talk about someone that is a little problematic. How much do you guys know about your favorite MAGA writers? The people that seem to be on the side of truth and justice in the American way, that love them some Donald Trump. Would it be a problem if they were Democrat donors? Would you be suspicious of someone that is writing a book saying the never-Trumpers are a real problem and that they have destroyed the Republican movement? Meanwhile, they are donating to the political opponents. Does that bother you? We're going to talk about that. Check out tomorrow's show. Make sure you guys have bookmarked this. Make sure you come back. Again, you can join us on Locals at kyleserafin.com. Thank you for joining us today. I hope we haven't blown your mind. And go follow my friend Steve Baker, TPC4 USA. He's on Twitter. Or you could just go to theblaze.com/truth. You don't have to pay for it. theblaze.com/truth. That's my buddy Steve Baker's program and all the information he's doing there. kyleserafin.com for the Locals. We'll see you guys again tomorrow. God bless you. Honestly, God bless you. And we'll see you then.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.